Hello everybody and welcome to Free UFC Bet Picks. Thanks for tuning into our show today. Welcome to 2021. Lots of amazing fights coming up this year. We are here today breaking down UFC Fight Island 7, Holloway versus Kattar. Going to be an amazing card coming up, and we're doing post-weigh-in, just super fast, lightning round breakdown. Anything you want to go over about last year?
No, wonderful year. Had a great final event of the year. Did really well on that Stevens versus Neal. Stephen Thompson versus Jeff Neal card. And, really looking forward to this year. We had a couple cards at the end of the year where we said half the underdogs might win. And one time we said 6 underdogs might win and 5 did. If you just bet the underdog money lines, you killed it. But I think we're back to parlay season. I'm really looking forward to a lot of these favorites that we've got coming up over the 3 cards in 8 days. Been adding a lot of these guys to parlays for months, and so a huge 3 cards that we have in front of us here in January.
Yeah. And this one coming up, Holloway versus Kattar, will be the first ever MMA card to be aired on ABC, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember the first fight card on Fox. Dos Santos and Cain Velasquez. It was like an hour-long card dedicated to just one fight, and it was like a first minute knockout for Junior. I remember back in the day on the first MMA card ever on network TV was on CBS. It was Elite XC. Seth Petrozelli versus Kimbo Slice. And that was such a monumental moment. This one's kind of like not getting as much attention. It's there's NFL playoffs Saturday and stuff going on, but it's such a huge deal to have this card on ABC, like you said. So
yeah,
and lots of bangers, lots of good fights on it, like you said too. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's get right into the amazing card coming up, starting with the prelims like normal and working our way up. So first up, we've got a featherweight bout between Jacob Kilburn and Austin Lingo. Both of these guys, big strikers, lots of finishes. Interestingly, though, the bookies do expect this one to go to decision in favor of Lingo. Lingo's the favorite here. To be fair, it is a featherweight fight, normally does go to the scorecards, but I just found it a little interesting here. I think there's a chance this one could finish, but what are you thinking about this one? Yeah,
I agree with everything you said. Kilburn's kind of a tailor-made matchup, I think, for Lingo. Lingo struggled with Zalal's movement. Kilburn's not going to smother and out-wrestle Lingo.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a stand-up fight, and I think that really favors Lingo. But if Lingo needs to, he can take it to the ground. Kilburn has no takedown defense. So I think Lingo's a pretty safe play here. And I wouldn't get too tricky with the methods because I totally agree. He could take it to decision, but he's got starching power in his left. Just kind of paws out with this, left jab, and then puts the check left hook on you, when he wants to counter. And it's, like I said, it's just starching power, especially for these lighter guys. So, I think Lingo's got a couple paths to victory here. Should be pretty safe.
Yeah. And what are you thinking about fantasy? We've got Lingo, one of the pricier picks, at $9,000, and Kilburn at $7,200.
I think they're both okay plays. Lingo, I probably won't see. You probably won't see a lot of Lingo in my lineups at 9,000.
Yeah.
Even though I think he's pretty confident. Maybe a cash game, but this could be a somewhat low-scoring decision. One notable change in DraftKings DFS scoring is that significant strikes used to be half a point. Now they're 0.4, so it's a 20% decrease there. That's a big deal, especially for guys like Max Holloway. From a DFS perspective. So, basically that rule change favors the wrestlers more and favors the finishers more. So something to note there. I think they're both okay plays, but just okay.
Yeah. All right, moving into our next fight here. It is a bantamweight bout between Sarah Moras and Vanessa Melo. Melo the underdog, and Moras is the favorite. This one is expected to end in a decision in favor of Moras. Probably going to be a grappling-heavy decision there. I was looking at a prop. Moras by decision is almost even money at -110. And I believe, yeah, it's still accurate. What are you thinking about this fight?
I think Moras should win. She's got a little bit of a cage control, grappling edge. She looked really trim, more trim than normal at the weigh-in, so it looks like she's been, really preparing hard for this fight. Melo should have a striking edge, from a technical point of view, but Yeah, I think Moras, like you put, probably a grappling heavy decision here. I would agree. If you're going to pick Moras, it's safe to go ahead and add that method prop. And I'd probably stay away from Moras in fantasy, but I think Melo's an okay play, as far as a salary-saving pump play goes.
Yeah, and if you do want to play Melo, she's at 7,100 and Moras at 9,100. So, yeah, I agree to pass on her at that price. All right, our next one is a welterweight bout between David Zawada and Ramazan Emeev. Emeev the favorite here, Zawada the underdog. Zawada does have a height advantage and quite a bit of a reach advantage here, but the wrestling game for Emeev is what is expected to win it for him. What are you thinking about this one? I know you're kind of on the Zawada train here.
Yeah, I think he's a live dog. He's bigger, like you said. He's got the reach. He's got the grappling the jiu-jitsu edge. And we've seen Ramazan struggle with that in the past. It kind of gives me TJ Laramie versus Derek Minner vibes. To think that the smaller guy is going to out-wrestle this guy, bigger jiu-jitsu wizard. That's sketchy to me. Ramazan does have, better striking than the stats would lead you to believe. I think he's like 43% efficiency. But again, I think he's more efficient than that would appear. He just does a great job of staying safe, and so he keeps his head really off the center line, and he throws straight punches that sometimes he might not quite reach the guy, but his striking defense is typically pretty good. So I think Ramazan's best bet actually is to keep it standing here. Somewhat counterintuitively, to what we're used to seeing from him, because I think Zawada is a live dog once it hits the mat for sure.
Yeah.
So I haven't really put either one of these folks in parlays. I would not be betting on Emeev. He's got a couple edges. The clinch game. He's got good cardio. We've never seen him gas, and he often goes 3 rounds, like you said. But I think his technical striking and defensive striking edge might be what gets it for him. But it's a little too close for me at that wide line. Yeah. I'm straight up picking Zawada to get a submission.
Yeah. And will you be putting him in fantasy? Zawada only at 7,000 and Emeev at 9,200.
Yeah, definitely Zawada, one of the more attractive salary-saving DFS plays for sure. Emeev, I don't think so, especially because, like I said, I think he's going to keep it standing, or I think that's a better bet for him. If he was going to go in there and get 8 takedowns, against a guy who has great stand-ups, he could score very high, but I think that's a little pricey for him.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next fight here. It is a heavyweight bout between Carlos Felipe and Justin Tafa. Felipe the favorite here and Tafa the underdog. Looking at method props a little, Felipe has a near equal chance of either getting a KO or winning by decision, whereas Tafa, if he does win, is fully expected to be by knockout. How do you see this one going?
It's a little interesting. Felipe was a lot heavier at the weigh-ins today. Tafa always weighs in right at the heavyweight limit, 264, 265, probably has to cut a little bit to get there. But, we've seen Felipe previously weigh in at like 245. He was at 264 today, and Tafa looked more trim. Tafa looked taller. They're both supposed to be 6 feet, but Tafa just looked bigger. I've been liking Felipe for a lot of reasons. He should have a third-round cardio edge. He's got good ring IQ and good kind of clinch game, cage control. And so we thought, great top game if you can get Tafa down. But I'm super nervous about this one. Suddenly, I think, I think Tafa. It's kind of like Tafa or pass, honestly. And I need to that we just watched the weigh-ins not too long ago. But I'm going to try to find out more about Felipe's 20-pound weight gain. From what I'm looking at. So I'm a little sketched out about it. I was definitely leaning Felipe for lots of reasons. But I think Tafa, and you don't want to put too much stock in the weigh-ins, but sometimes, you don't know. You find out after the fight, after Felipe loses, that maybe he had an injury or something. And it's like, well, shit. We wish we would have known that. Of course, he's not going to say that before the fight, but seems like it could be one of those situations. I wouldn't be surprised if Felipe had difficulty training leading up to this fight. Maybe he had a foot or knee injury or something that we're not privy to. I'm going to go ahead and pick Tafa as a dog here.
Yeah. And are you playing either of these guys in fantasy? Felipe at 8,600 and Tafa at 7,600.
So typically you just really want to play heavyweights in DFS because they finish more often. But this one, like you said, Felipe is kind of expected to grind out a decision if he wins. You know, a lot of people are giving him the advantages and picking him to win because they think he's going to perform better in those later rounds, right? So they're expecting a late decision, late finish or a decision. I kind of think Felipe is a little pricey at 8,600, especially since the weigh-ins are giving me pause. Even before that, I think it's a little pricey. Tafa, I think, is a good play. Like you said, he's live for a knockout at a really cheap price.
All right, moving on to our next fight here. It is a women's flyweight bout between Yanan and Joselyne Edwards. Since yesterday, this has become a pick'em fight. Yanan at -115 and Edwards at -102. And although both these fighters actually do have decent finishing rates, it is expected to go to decision. I think this is mainly a pass on betting. We usually don't bet on women's fights, but whichever you're picking, I would recommend going with them by decision rather than their money line, just to boost your odds a little bit. But how do you see this one going?
Yes, it's a little too close for me. These pick'em fights where I don't have a strong lean either way, I typically do pass on them. Half the people are going to be right and win $90. Half the people are going to be wrong and lose 100. And that's how they build big old casinos. So I think I'd agree. I think it's a pass. I'm just, Wu is. I'll pick Wu. She was supposed to be fighting Betch Correia. She's been training for this, but Edwards is really strong, decent striking, kind of just like a more brawling boxing style where Yanan likes to use movement, kind of a wide stance, bouncing in and out, great kicks. Neither one of them has a ground game, especially no takedown defense. I kind of think Edwards, if there's one of them that we would say, which one could have improved their wrestling the most in the last 6 months, I would say it's probably Joselyne Edwards. So but she is a late replacement. I think Wu's the pick, but definitely not touching it. And I would agree. I don't see a finish happening here.
And probably pass on fantasy as well.
Yeah, pass on fantasy. Even though Edwards, she's not like a salary saver really. I just think they're both close enough. 8,400, 7,800, right?
Yeah.
And I don't feel strong about either one of them. I think that's too pricey. 7,800 is too pricey.
Yeah, I agree. All right, moving on to our next one. It is a middleweight bout between Hawes and Nassourdine Imavov. Hawes is the favorite here, Imavov the underdog. This fight is heavily expected to end by a knockout, and Hawes does have a 100% finish rate, but we have seen that he slows a lot after that first round, and I think if Imavov is able to survive that first round, he has a very good chance of taking this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been waiting for an opportunity, to kind of fade Hawes. I like him, but we saw suspect losses on Tough and in World Series of Fighting, and we just needed a guy that could get past the first round. That's durable enough, strong enough, well-rounded enough to drag this fight on, and that's definitely Nassourdine. We were really big on Nassourdine when he fought Jordan Williams, and Jordan Williams is no scrub. Jordan Williams has some really, underrated resume, I think, some underrated names on his resume, and, but we were heavy on Nassourdine to beat Jordan Williams. He's plus 120. It's interesting. It's like the same exact line, right around plus 120, except it's against a much better fighter in Hawes. So it's a close one, but I do think Nassourdine's going to win. And I think he's going to really be popular after this fight. I think, after 6 minutes, like as soon as that second round starts, Imavov's really going to pour it on. The free client play this week is actually to live bet Nassourdine after round one. I think Hawes is going to come out with some impressive, powerful looking striking in round one. He's already, a favorite. I think he might be minus 250, minus 300 or wider after round one. And there's a lot of variables. You got to use good judgment, right? And you got to make sure you haven't paused and you're not behind. You got to make sure you're live. You got to make sure you're watching, up to speed, right? But I absolutely think that live betting Nassourdine after round one is gonna pay off.
Yeah, that's a good call there. And are you playing either of these guys in fantasy? We've got Hawes at 8,800 and Imavov at 7,400.
I'd have a lot of Nassourdine and a little bit of Hawes. Hawes is expensive at 8,800, but if he wins, it's going to be by vicious knockout.
Yeah.
One would think. So if I was playing 10 lineups, I'd have Hawes in a couple of them. But if I'm playing 2 lineups, I won't have any Hawes, and I'd have Nassourdine in probably both. It's just super cheap and super live. Just well-rounded, great cardio. The younger guy coming, improving big time. They both train with great fighters, but I just think we're going to see Nassourdine improve every time we see him. Looking forward to him.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our main card here. Starting it off, we've got a middleweight bout between Punahele Soriano and Dusko Todorovic. Two undefeated fighters here, should be a really good one, and it is expected to finish and expected to end by knockout. I was looking at the props here, none of them were really screaming at me, mainly just because I think this is a close matchup, and I think it's not a super wide line, but I think it's closer than the line even indicates. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been big on Soriano, been a fan of his for a while. We were just watching his tape recently when we were, tape studying for Jamie Pickett. Jamie Pickett was just in survival mode that whole time. Every time Soriano touched him, you could just see the effect. And Soriano, so people think, Todorovic might be a little more well-rounded, and maybe that's true, but I think Soriano's all-around game is underrated. He's not just first-round knockout or bust. He's really strong, really wide. He looked really comfortable and kind of funny at the weigh-ins. I think he... I've actually got Soriano in a number of bets, and I've been playing him since the line first came out. I thought Dusko's a little overrated. Daquan Townsend, we just haven't seen much from Dusko. So, yeah, picking Soriano as the dog. I've got him in some bets. Really looking forward to this fight. And if you're picking Dusko, I think it's more likely to go decision. So, if you're leaning that way, I might even go ahead and toss that method prop on there. I don't think he's going to finish Punahele here. Yeah.
And are you throwing either of these guys in your fantasy lineups?
Lots of Soriano. I only played a couple lineups and didn't play any Dusko. Lots of Punahele though.
Yeah, he's only 7,700. It's pretty good.
Yeah. And he's live for a knockout for sure.
All right, moving on to our next fight here. It is a middleweight bout between Joaquin Buckley and Alessio de Chirico. Buckley the favorite here, de Chirico the underdog. Another fight that is expected to finish by knockout. We're very hyped on Joaquin Buckley, big fans. He just won the 2020 Knockout of the Year, which is pretty awesome. And I am a little biased, but I think this wide line is deserved here in favor of Buckley. How do you think this fight will go?
I think Buckley does get the win. I think he does finish. I think he's the safest parlay leg on the card. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, like to talk about de Chirico being super durable, but I think that's overstated. We saw him dropped by like a really lazy, playful head kick at 14 minutes and 58 seconds against Zach Cummings in his last fight. Mm-hmm. And Buckley, just his body hooks are so underrated. Guys have a tendency to kind of grab him and clinch him once he's putting those strikes on him to save themselves, and he just starts ripping vicious body hooks on you that make his opponents just kind of push him away. They just want away from that situation. I really don't see a path to victory for Alessio, to be honest. So yeah, this is the most confident pick of the card for me. I got Buckley in a lot of parlays, but I've just been playing him straight up money line. I've got a couple of him with KO, but mostly just playing him the money line. I think it's a really safe bet.
Yeah. And do you have Buckley in any of your fantasy lineups at 9,400, one of the pricier ones, and de Chirico at 6,800?
He is. I think Buckley, if I recall, was the priciest fighter on the card, even though like Ponzinibbio and there are some wider lines. Mm-hmm. Ponzinibbio is like minus 310 or so. But Buckley, I had trouble. Like I had to kind of finagle my lineup and adjust some things to get up to 9,400 to afford him. So it was difficult. I would try. I think he's, absolutely going to score high here. I would try to afford him if you can, but it's a little tough, and there are some other attractive pieces on the card. But yeah, absolutely Buckley. De Chirico, I really don't think so. He's going to be incredibly low owned. Might be an okay GPP play, just in case he does drag it out to a decision and scores 40 or 50 points in a decision or something like that. But I think Buckley's going to go ahead and finish him pretty early here.
Yeah. All right, moving on to our next fight. It is a welterweight bout between Santiago Ponzinibbio and JingLiang. Lee is the underdog here, Santiago the favorite. Very excited to have Santiago back in the ring. His last fight, he dominated against Neil Magny. That was about 2 years ago, though, so I'm excited to see what he does. And he's coming back against a very aggressive, durable fighter. Definitely an exciting fight here. What do you think?
Yeah, really excited about Ponzinibbio. Been adding him. I'm actually a little overexposed to Ponzinibbio. We have a lot of Ponzinibbio in parlays. Been putting him in those since that line became available like a while ago, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago. I'm getting a little nervous. Ponzinibbio looks really good. He looked comfortable and relaxed, playful at weigh-ins like he always is. I'll tell you that, it says they're both 6 feet. I think he's closer to like 5'10 and a half, 5'11. I think Lee is a decent bit bigger than Ponzi here. That hasn't been a big deal. Like you said, he just, finished Neil Magny in the 4th round. Neil Magny's like 6'3 or whatever. So, he's dealt with bigger guys before, but like you said, Lee is just extremely durable. Little worried. I'm getting a little worried. Maybe I'm just overthinking it a little bit, but I'm a little worried about, JingLiang pouring it on and having a great 2nd and 3rd round. Ponzinibbio's never had any cardio problems in the past. He's very efficient with his energy because his striking is just so technical. His jab straight, low kick. He might have the most fundamental, sound, offensive kickboxing game at welterweight. Just really, really like his stand-up style. So I don't anticipate any cardio issues. Like you said, he did have a long layoff, but it's only a 3-round fight. He had bone issues, bone infections, like broken hand. He had a lot of stuff going on that kept him out. So I'd say tread lightly. Lee is legit. Lee's been in the UFC for a long time, got good wins, and he normally does it just by being durable and outlasting guys. So I'd tread lightly, but I'm really heavy on Ponzi and really looking forward to this. This should be a banger. But Lee, I'm going to be sweating a little bit during this fight, I think. Lee is a very durable, real fighter.
Yeah.
This is a wide line like you see in, some late replacement scrub getting brought to the UFC, and this is not that case.
Yeah.
It's just that Ponzinibbio was like a title challenger in a lot of people's minds. So, he's just really talented, really well-rounded, really solid, crisp power. So looking forward to it. Ponzinibbio is definitely the pick. I would anticipate him actually kind of winning by decision. But I tread lightly. Lee is dangerous.
And what are you thinking about fantasy on these guys? Santiago pricier at 9,300 and Lee at 6,900.
So it's actually it's only $100 difference between Buckley and Santiago, and I kept being able to afford Santiago and using all my salary, which a lot of times we say not to use all your salary in GPP plays. Like, let us know if you have more questions on the nuance of daily fantasy, but. Santiago, I feel like is a tiny bit pricey at 9,300 actually, even though I'm really confident in him. So I think they're both solid plays. Lee at 6,900 is a really solid play. Santiago, I feel like is a little pricey at 9,300. I try to get up to Buckley at 94.
All right, moving on here to our co-main event, a welterweight bout between Carlos Condit and Matt Brown. Couple of legends here. It's going to be an amazing fight. Condit is the favorite here, Brown the underdog. It's expected to go to decision. And looking at the props, I was not really seeing anything jumping out at me. This one is another close matchup. I was maybe looking at the over 2.5 at minus 112, just because it is expected to go to the scorecards. But what are you thinking about this one?
It's a close one. I'm looking forward to it. I think Condit's pretty safe here. The more and more that I think about it, after seeing the weigh-ins, people like saying that these guys are shells of themselves or they're just like super old legends. But Condit still looks the same as ever to me. And Matt Brown does look just slow, just getting on and off the scale. He just looks slow. He had like his chest shaved in a couple spots, and I don't know if it's anything concerning, but kind of makes me think that he was in the hospital recently, or maybe it was just standard tests. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. I got to look more into that, but it was a little unusual. I haven't seen that before from him. And we know about his durability issues. He's had big time like concussion issues back in the day. His body, he gets hurt by body shots really, really bad. So he looked okay against Miguel Beza in his last fight for a couple minutes, and then Beza, just knocked him out cold. So I think Condit is absolutely live. I think Brown's kind of first round knockout or bust here. I do think Condit could just win a decision here, pretty safe. 15 minutes in a Carlos Condit fight flies by. So I like Condit. I like Condit by decision, even though Matt Brown's got the durability issues. Condit has a great ground game, but he hasn't had a submission in like a decade, like a really long time. So he likes to just keep it standing. So I think it's just going to be a rather boring, to be honest, clinic by Condit, probably decision. I think Matt Brown's just durable enough, and Condit isn't. He's a natural born killer. He's got lots of finishes, but I think he's just going to stay rather technical and safe here and win rather easily.
Yeah. And are you putting either of these guys in fantasy lineups? Condit at 8,700 and Brown at 7,500, both decent prices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like they're both kind of a pass. You know, Brown at 7,500. Like if I'm looking for just a live knockout opportunity, like a live dog that with knockout power, I feel like 7,500 is a little pricey for that. You know, if it's not the worst play. I think they're both okay plays.
Yeah.
But just okay.
All right, let's move on to our main event here, a featherweight bout between Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar. Holloway the favorite here, Kattar the underdog. This one is also expected to go to decision, but it's going to be high volume fight, lots of striking. It's going to be very exciting. Probably great place for fantasy here, but we'll get into that in a minute. But how do you see this fight going?
Really big on Holloway actually. You know, on the Holloway kind of point of view, you say he just got robbed against Alec Volkanovski. You say, you know, Holloway's been hit like more than anybody in UFC history, and he's never been knocked down. Like, you know, it's hard. You'd be hard pressed to find a more durable fighter. You know, there's lots of things to like about Max. You think Max is going to have the better movement, the better kicking, the better experience. He's gone 5 rounds so many times, and you kind of think Kattar's knockout or bust. On the Kattar side, you say, well, those Max Holloway robberies, it's because he's slowing down the second half of the fight. You know, he was putting it on Alex in round 1 and 2 and then slowed down. You could say that, you know, after taking a ton of damage against Dustin Poirier, he was slowing down. So that's a little bit of a concern, yeah. And you can also say that Kattar's just getting better and better and better. You know, he wasn't like some vicious knockout guy on the regional scene who now, you know, fights against tougher competition and those knockouts kind of disappear like we often see. Quite the opposite, actually. He's getting more power. He's getting better. He's finishing guys when he didn't even used to. So, you know, there's lots to like about Kattar. I think when you just look at a picture of these guys, Kattar looks way bigger, but, you know, he's really not. Max, you know, is going to have, you know, the reach and height are basically the same, but the way Max fights, I think he's going to have a perceived reach advantage here. He's got the movement. They both have good kicks. You know, in the first Alex Volkanovski fight, his low kicks were hurting Holloway and kind of changed the tide. But in the second fight, you know, Holloway, I think, had the edge with the kicks there. So, really close fight. But I just think, in the grand scheme of things, you know, Sunday morning, when after this fight, you know, Holloway should be like a 2.5 to 1, 3 to 1 favorite. I think Holloway should be a huge, huge favorite here. And I do have him in a lot of parlays, and I got him by decision in some of those. For the DFS, you mentioned it. You know, the Holloway 8,900, Kattar 7,300. I think they're both really good plays. You know, Holloway is just a DFS monster, a fantasy monster. But we did mention that change in the scoring. So you know, all of his significant strikes are 20% less valuable. Right? Back in the day, if he landed 160 strikes. You know, oh my God, I'm like putting myself on that's 80 points, right? Now it'd be like 60 something, you know, 63 or so. And then you win, you know, points for winning the unanimous decision, you know, winning the decision. But it's not quite a 20% DFS decrease that he would lose. But it's a 20% decrease in those significant strikes, which are the majority of his points. So, you know, Max is going to be a little lower scoring than he previously is. But I think, you know, 8,900 for a guy I'm really confident in who's got 10 extra minutes versus all these other guys to pour points on. I think Holloway's a great play, especially for cash, where you're just looking for sure thing winners. You know, Kattar I think is a good play either way. And in cash games, I would recommend stacking these guys. Stacking is where you play both fighters from the same fight. So to have Max, Kattar, and 4 other fighters across the rest of the card. You don't want to do that in guaranteed prize pools plays, you know, because you got to pick the 6 highest scoring people. And typically a stack opportunity is not going to be the, you know, 2 of the 6 highest scoring. You're typically not going to have the optimal lineup when you do that. But when you're looking for cash games, you're just looking for safe bets and high scorers and, you know, winners. I would stack these guys. We said to do that in the, you know, Marvin Vettori versus Jack Hermanson fight, and they set the record for middleweight strikes in a fight. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's not something you always want to do, but I think this is an opportunity to do it. So both great plays. Max specifically for cash games, and in cash games you might even stack them.
Yeah. All right, I think that is a wrap on UFC Fight Island 7. It's going to be an amazing card. You're going to be seeing lots more of us. We're going to be doing 3 fights over the next 8 days. Yeah. So we'll have that video out for UFC Fight Island 8, hopefully in the next couple days here. Try to get an early one out for you guys. Yeah, anything else you want to say about this one?
Nope. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you, and like she said, keep an eye up. Keep an eye open for those other fight cards coming up.
Yeah.
On Twitter and Instagram, we're for UFC bet picks. A lot of folks are always asking us about which parlays and stuff to play, so we're very responsive on there, especially Instagram. And we're also been putting out some NBA DFS content, same game parlay content and stuff on there. We've hit a lot of same game parlays, in NFL and NBA the last couple months. So check us out on there, and thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching, and enjoy the first fights of 2021. We'll see you next time.